What is up, guys? George is here with Minuttia, and today I'm going to share with you why keyword density is a bit overrated. Let's get into it. So, to explain why keyword density nowadays is a bit overrated and is used in most cases in the wrong way by SEO professionals and content creators, we are going to use two examples. The first one is COVID-19, something that unfortunately has, affected the lives of many people in 2020. So let's say, for the sake of example, that we want to create a resource around COVID-19, okay? So this is our target term in this case. Right now, as you can see, we are in Clearscope, one of the tools we are using for content creation for our clients as well as for our own brand. Clearscope is a tool that uses natural language processing to give us recommendations on what we need to write when it comes to a particular topic. In this case, we want to see what the recommendations coming by Clearscope are for the target term COVID-19. So let's click to relevant terms to see what Clearscope suggests as relevant terms when it comes to COVID-19. Now, before moving any further, you need to understand that Clearscope gives us these recommendations by analyzing the top results on the SERPs, in particular google.com, and by understanding what the other resources that rank high on the SERPs include in their content, gives us recommendations on what we need to write about in order to be considered as a relevant resource and thus perform well on the SERPs as well, okay? So let's take a look at the terms that we have here that are suggested by Clearscope. First of all, we have 4 columns: term, heading presence, typical number of uses, and importance. As expected, the first term here is COVID-19. Then we have coronavirus, public health, coronavirus disease, pandemic, CDC, Gov, cases, social distancing, stay home, health department, symptoms, hand washing, and so on and so forth. So as you can see here, just by taking a simple look at the recommendations provided by Clearscope, and I want you to know that the search engines think in a similar way, we can understand that when it comes to COVID-19, there are various topics that we need to cover and include in our content piece in order to be considered as a relevant resource. I would say that even though keyword density is still important, it's not as important as it used to be. And the reason is Google and other search engines, for that matter, are able and capable of understanding what's the context behind a piece of content simply by analyzing the text and using natural language processing in order to get the meaning behind the words. In other words, this means that in order to be considered a relevant resource for our target term COVID-19, we don't have to include the term COVID-19 as many times as possible. In fact, we can see here that the typical number of uses, according to Clearscope, is 8 to 22, okay? Now, as you can imagine, we will include our target term sometimes in our piece of content, and we cannot avoid that, and we have to do that basically. But that's not the only thing that matters, because search engines are capable of understanding what our piece is all about. If we have, for example, terms like, in our case, for COVID-19, pandemic, social distancing, stay home, testing, symptoms, and so on and so forth, because all these terms are tightly relevant to our target term, COVID-19. Let's see a second example, this time for a published guest post of ours. A while back, in April 2020, we published this guest post on CoScheduled's blog. As you can see, it's a guest post around web copywriting. It also includes a template for 2020. Let's see how this piece performs according to Ahrefs as of today, Friday, July 3rd. The target term for this guest post is obviously website copywriting. And as you can see, according to Ahrefs, right now our piece ranks in position 8 on the SERPs. Now, this is a piece that's in depth and has over 7,000 words, as we will see later. So we could say that this explains the reason why the piece is ranking for our target term website copywriting. However, if you take a look at the actual piece and see how many times we've used that exact term, the target term here, which is website copywriting, you will see that we've only used it 12 times. You can check for variations as well, such as web copywriting, but once again, you will see that we haven't used our target term as many times, even though our piece is well over 7,000 words. So you may wonder what's going on here. How is it possible that a piece ranks for the target term even though it doesn't include the target term or close variations to the target term many times inside the content? If you analyze the piece with Clearscope, you will see that it has, according to Clearscope, a content grade of A++. The suggested minimum for our target term, which is website copywriting, is B+. This means that we have done a great job at integrating the suggested terms by Clearscope inside our content. In other words, we are relevant without having to include our target term as many times as possible inside the content. And this is what makes the difference here. As you can see, on the right, we have the terms suggested by Clearscope, as we mentioned before, by analyzing the top results on the SERPs. And as you can see, we have 45 terms, okay, sorted by importance. Now, you will see that the only terms that we haven't used, based on Clearscope's recommendations once again, are HubSpot, LinkedIn, and About page, okay, terms suggested by Clearscope. But we have done a great job at using all the other terms suggested by Clearscope. And this is why, at least this is one of the reasons that can explain why the piece started performing, because essentially we have covered everything that's relevant to our target term, which is website copywriting, and we didn't have to include our target term as many times as possible. Because as we saw earlier with COVID-19, you can see that there are many relevant terms to our target term website copywriting, such as copywriting, obviously, SEO, target audience, homepage, call to action, Google, case studies, web copy, search engines, and so on and so forth. So we've done a good job at integrating those terms into our piece of content, and thus we didn't have to include the target term website copywriting as many times as possible in order to help our piece of content perform. This means that we've managed to be relevant based on what Google considers to be relevant for the target term website copywriting. Remember that Google tries, and its ultimate goal is to serve the most relevant result based on the searcher's query. So in other words, a tool like Clearscope is telling us that if you want to rank for a term like website copywriting, this is what you need to write about, because this is what Google considers to be relevant to this target term. And this is basically what we are trying to do with all the content that we produce, both for our clients, but also for our own brand, even if it has to do with a guest post, such as the example that we mentioned. So once again, and I want to make it very clear, keyword density is important, but it's not as important as it used to be. And above all, there are many other factors involved when it comes to considering if a piece is relevant or not to a target term. So that was it. I hope you found that useful. Please feel free to leave your comments and thoughts or even objections below. And stay tuned for more videos like that. Cheers!